Good afternoon. My name is Peter Morrow, and I am the newest member here at Latitude Ventures. It's a real honor to have you join us for yet another Latitude webinar. Today's topic is very, very exciting. It is about the power of matchup, our flagship pitch competition that we will be hosting at the Latitude Conference in Miami this September. Today, we have an all-star lineup of speakers for you to talk a little bit about matchup and what it gave them when they were on stage. Starting off, we'll have Sol Trujillo, the founding partner of Latitude and Latitude Ventures. We have Sandra Velasquez, founder of NOPALERA, our 2022 matchup winner. We have Eric Aguilar, the founder of Omnitron, our 2021 matchup winner, all here to tell you a little bit about their experience. Before we do so, let me tell you a little bit about Latitude and matchup. Latitude Ventures is a $100 million institutional venture fund that invests in US Latinos, founders who are building the next generation of innovative companies. To date, we've invested in about 27 companies, and many of them started right on stage at matchup. This year, we are programming a very exciting competition where we'll have dozens of companies pitching to win Latitude Startup of the Year and a very meaningful level of non-dilutive capital to help accelerate their growth. But Latitude is more than just the pitch or the dollars that are won on stage. It's about who's in the room. And this year, we expect more than 1,000 people coming from the venture community who are looking to invest capital, corporates who could be customers or suppliers. This is really the central location for networking and to access venture capital and corporate decision makers. So I'd like to turn it over to our founding partner, Sol Trujillo, who will help talk a little bit about the genesis of matchup and the power that it has for the Latino entrepreneurial community. For those of you who don't know Sol, his experience and impact in the community speaks for itself. But he's an international Latino executive and a global CEO with 3 decades of experience on 3 continents, really unprecedented in our community. So Sol, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about, how this got started in terms of matchup, why it was created, and really what it offers the founders who end up on stage.
All right, Pete, thank you very much. And welcome to everybody that's viewing this webinar. I guess the history of Latitude, I need to start in terms of Latitude Ventures, is to say that I've done a lot of analysis and I've read a lot of people approach me personally about investing in their companies. And I always ask the question, where have you gone? And most people were telling me over the last kind of decade or two, there's nowhere to go. And so I decided that it's time for us to have our own neighborhood and to have our own ability to direct people to a fund that would welcome people named Garcia, Martinez, Hernandez, whatever it might be, and whether they're men or women, and that we would be able to create a friendly place for them to compete for capital, but also get other benefits. So that was the genesis of creating this notion of Latitude Ventures under the umbrella of Latitude, which is a big event where we're bringing everybody together around the country in terms of looking at the importance of Latinos. And so then the question is what's going to be different? And in terms of Latitude Ventures, the idea here was to make sure that we had a place where, one, people could access capital, and we were focusing on early stage companies. Number 2 is not only to provide the capital, which I would say is mostly a commodity, but to provide the value out of mentoring, coaching, operating reviews, and all the disciplines that I've been able to learn and deploy in terms of running big companies all over the world. And then the third layer is the connections. Those are, in terms of, I've done a startup myself, and the first thing and the most difficult thing is to get your first contracts, the first customers, the first everything. And so the question is how do you do that? Well, we accelerate that. And Sandra and Eric might be able to talk about how we can do that. And then the fourth element is around the visibility. And those of you that have been to Latitude, you'll see that when we have our matchup event, it is not only big and very competitive, but it's covered. We had Jim Cramer there from CNBC. We had Joe Kernan there from CNBC. We had other reporters from other periodicals and publications, both online or traditional, that were there taking a look at what was happening with this Latino-Latina cohort, which is the most dynamic, entrepreneurial, innovative cohort that we have in our country today. So that was the genesis of it. And so we wanted to make sure now that we had a chance to talk about it. And we had a chance to feature at least two of the winners that we've had over the last couple of years at the event and get their perspective in terms of what's happening, because we will have matchup at the Latitude event this coming September 27th through the 30th. And as Pete said, we expect it to be big. We want a lot of people competing for the capital that we're going to have available. This is not like Shark Tank. This is real money in real quantities for real businesses that we and you are going to be able to hear from right now. So let me pivot in terms of turning to introduce the guests that we have with us today. And the first one that I'll introduce is Sandra Velasquez, who is the CEO and founder of NOPALERA, the matchup winner during this past year. And I have to tell you, when the event was held in our largest ballroom, the competition that was going on was exciting. People presenting, people clapping, people cheering, people all of that. But at the end of the day, when Sandra was named the winner of last year's competition, the place erupted. You could have been at a basketball game, a football game, whatever soccer match where the last goal is scored and everybody's cheering and applauding. Well, Sandra is the CEO and founder of NOPALERA, an award-winning Mexican botanical bath and body brand, and she's based in New York City. She launched NOPALERA in 2020 with no outside funding while working 3 jobs at the age of 44. Does she sound Latina? Sounds very Latina to me. Prior to launching NOPALERA, Velasquez was the leader of the Latin alternative band Pistolera, and she worked as a sales manager for several CPG brands across categories. Sandra is the host of the NOPALERA podcast and works as a mentor to emerging CPG brands through her online classes. So you'll get to see her up front and close shortly. Let me introduce Eric Aguilar, who is the CEO and co-founder of Omnitron Sensors, which was the matchup winner in 2021. And when he won, he was on stage with crutches after having had a recent accident that made him subject to being with crutches. But let me tell you, he's running hard. He's the CEO and co-founder of Omnitron Sensors and is a board member of Ascent Robotics. He's a recognized leader in Silicon Valley in the field of innovative sensor systems, particularly in the robotics space, which has led also into the autonomous platform space, which I would say, and this is my editorial ad here, is that when you think about the virtual world that everybody's talking about, you need this idea of smart sensors. You need the idea of the ability to be almost universally available and being able to sense and see and view everything that's going on around the omniverse that some people call it. So Eric started his career building drone sensors for the US Navy research labs and defense contractors. He joined Lumidyne, which was a startup that licensed Navy IP to build a revolutionary motion sensor, which was later acquired by Google. He also worked at Tesla, leading firmware and sensor integration efforts for the Model 3 vehicle that Elon Musk had launched. So we have 2 very accomplished business people here that are doing very well. So let me turn it over to Sandra first. And Sandra, let's talk about your experience in terms of launching a business, but then seeking capital, and who would you like to do business with and how has it worked?
Yes, well, thank you for having me. Good to see everyone. Always good to see you, Sol. So yes, I launched NOPALERA. I launched a business really out of a need to build a completely new life for myself. So it was a moment of courage. Like, I'm going to step outside the box. I'm going to build something bigger that I have ever been a part of before. Instead of working for other brands and helping them build their brands, I'm going to build my own. I felt like I was the right person for the job because I wanted to build a Latina, centric beauty brand that was elevated. I felt that that's where the opportunity was, because in this country, as you know, I'm preaching to the choir here, a lot of times people associate Latino goods with value, meaning like lower price, right? And so for me, the opportunity was, I knew that our community was ready. I'm that consumer myself, right? And so I had to learn everything from the beginning, though, Sol, because I had never worked in the beauty industry. I had never been a manufacturer before. So it was really out of this survival instinct to create a better life for myself and my child that I embarked on what is now Nopalera, which is, can be found now in like over 600 stores, Nordstrom, Credo, Free People, over 400 influential boutiques. And I bootstrapped for the first 2 years. I did everything on my American Express card, as I've expressed to you. And then after, 2 years of small working capital loans from Shopify Capital, $30,000 here, $50,000 here, that's just not enough for purchase orders, when you're a product-based business. And so I was so relieved and excited to learn that a fund like Latitude Ventures existed, that was Latino, partners focused on Latino founders, and, stepping into the Latitude, into Matchup and into your entire event was really, I have never been into an event like that in my life, where I walk in and it is thousands and thousands of Latino professionals across all industries. I knew intellectually that we exist. I know that we exist in all categories across all verticals. I know this, but I had never seen them all in one place. And so to me, I have to first speak on that point, that there is no other event that you can walk into, like the Latitude event that we're going to have in Miami this year, where you will be surrounded by 6,000 Latino professionals. That doesn't exist unless you go to like Coachella, And so to be able to be in that kind of environment, so where we get to walk in as Latino founders, as Latino business owners, and not have to explain our lived experience to anyone, is worth everything. Because as a founder raising capital, as a Latina founder raising capital, that is what takes up like 5 of the Zoom calls when you're dealing with investors. It's having to explain the magnitude, the power, the opportunity of the Latino cohort in the United States, right? Whereas with Latitude, we don't have to do that because you guys are the ones producing the data. You know the power of the cohort. You see the data, right? So we don't have to explain our lived experience and so for me, that is something that just is unmatched. And, so being a part of Matchup, again, puts you in the room, as you mentioned, with people that are part of this ecosystem, that are so excited that you exist, that are ready to support you. Like the connections that I made at the Latitude conference last year are still carrying me to this day, right? And they're going to carry me into years ahead, right? The opportunities, the relationships, because as you said, network is everything. And so imagine being able to go to one place where everyone that you need to know is there, and if someone is not there, the people who are there know that person and they can put you in touch. So that is the power of not just Matchup, but the Latitude Conference in general, that I cannot express that enough to other founders who are considering going. There's just nothing like it.
Well, that's music to my ears, Sandra, because when Gary Acosta and I first were conceiving Latitude and ultimately Matchup, it was about this idea about the neighborhood, right? Where you can go into that bank, the virtual bank is now Latitude Ventures, where people welcome you. They want to hear from you. Because that's what Latitude Ventures is about. We are focused only on Latino and Latina founders, and only on the early stage at this point, because we know how hard it is. That's what the data showed. And so I'm really glad to hear, your experience. So let me talk to Eric for a little bit, and then I want both of you to kind of engage in terms of perhaps some of the challenges then that you were able to overcome or reduce cycle time to some of the elements that, finding customers, getting into places, once you have the capital and you're looking to build the relationships and even the visibility, like in your case, because you are a B2C to mostly, to a large extent, kind of business, how that helps in terms of getting in. So Eric, why don't we talk to you about your business, because you're on another end of the spectrum in terms of embedded technology that's going to enable so much in terms of everybody's daily lives. You want to explain why you decided to start this company called Omnitron?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for the introduction, Sol. Really excited to be here. I'll start by saying that I'm a nerd, and I've spent most of my career just designing and integrating sensors into robots. And that was a lot of fun, but I saw some unique problems that these sensors were facing and had an idea with my co-founder on how to improve it. So we made the jump from our comfy corporate jobs into the startup world again. And that jump was not easy. And one of the things that I distinctly recall when first hearing about you guys and this network, I'm also a bit of an introvert. So, how do I reach out? How do I open up? How do I connect with investors, customers, opportunities? Where do I go? That's what I found unique about what Latitude is doing in our ecosystem. And since winning Matchup and just being part of this ecosystem, I've built a very large network, especially with Latinos. Our company, since the event, has quadrupled in size. Our value has grown by more than 6x, and we continue to push the envelope on innovation. And like what Sandra was saying, I believe that this cohort's social capital is one of the greatest strengths that I have seen. And Latitude has been uniquely positioned to put us together to create the leaders of tomorrow. And, being an observer this year, when Sandra won, it was just so exciting to see other startups getting together and networking and building the future generation of wealth in our community. It's super exciting. And speaking uniquely with Latitude, the doors that you guys have opened are just unmatched. Talk about Fortune 100 companies at C-level connections has allowed us to foster meaningful relationships that is just unmatched. And one last thing I'll add is for those that are looking to do this matchup event, it is fun. It's exciting. I've made some lifelong relationships with other executives and peers. And I found that being authentic has been the best part. Embracing my inner nerd has been one of the exciting parts about enjoying this experience.
Well, that's really great to hear, Eric, because you're off in a realm, and I use the word realm, that's much different than most because of the high technology component. And it's part of the transition that those of you that are millennials and Gen Z and alpha generation, you're going to live and experience, the rest of your lives. And so having that ecosystem there that enables it. I've been involved with technology from, I was one of the early digital people when everybody said, why do you want to do that? Why do you want fiber everywhere? Why, all these things. And that will be the continuous journey. So when Sandra gets into marketing her products and going direct to consumer, it's enabled through technology, and how she's going to consult with them, and all these things are going to happen. So one of the things that I love hearing is how each of you are thinking now about your business and ultimately going to market. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So Sandra, you know, in terms of our experiences, that we are disciplined. I mean, we love Latinos and Latinas, right? That's, you know, the abrazos are there and they're ready to go. But we also are disciplined in terms of how we're trying to help you as business people not only gain the capital, but be disciplined in the processes. So can you talk about that kind of experience with Latitude Ventures and how we've hopefully helped you or not, or maybe slowed you down or accelerated you, whatever it might be. I'm looking for the truth here so that you're talking to all these people that are either listening live or will be able to listen to it in terms of in a recorded platform.
Yes. Well, you know, when I first found out about, I have to rewind back to when I first found out about Latitude Ventures, it was through another founder friend of mine who was also in your portfolio, which is Kayla from Agua Bonita. And I said, okay, Kayla, because, you know, just like VCs talk to each other, us founders, we talk to each other too. We're like, okay, Eric, tell me the truth. How is it to work with Latitude, right? So it was the same, you know, I had a call with Kayla and I said, okay, tell me, you know, and she said, they really do know who they say they know. And which really just speaks to the power of your network, right? Because again, going back to this concept of network, you know, your network is everything. As they say, like your network determines your net worth. And so I know that even if it's not someone on the Latitude immediate partner team, you know, who can help me in my beauty e-com business, you know, somebody that can. And that's the value, right? And that's what I recommend to any founder who's going to take money from any, you know, VC is like, make sure that it's not just about the money, because as you mentioned, so that's just the commodity aspect. What is the value? Like, how are you going to help me scale? How are we going to turn this into a global legacy brand, right? That's going to be here long after we are no longer here, right? So that's the aim. And so that is where, you know, I work with Laura, you know, often we meet frequently to talk about like, here's what I need, go find me this person, ask your network, because I know that Latitude, the people in the Latitude network know who I need to know. So yeah. And I also just want to add something that's not really like part of your, this question here, but I want to add that one of the beauty of Latitude is that I'm so grateful that I'm alive right now in this moment, that when I needed the money, Latitude existed. And this is not 10 years ago, because you didn't exist 10 years ago, right? I mean, how old is the Latitude Fund? Like
basically getting close to 2 years in terms of conception, and then
yeah,
it's basically about a year in terms of closing of the fund, because we tried to raise the money, the $100 million in the fund quickly, so that we could start deploying capital in a disciplined way.
Right. And so I just want to highlight this because I was actually on a panel yesterday in a room full of investors, not Latino. And they, you know, someone asked in the audience, how do we change the wealth gap here? How do we change? How do we really help entrepreneurs now? You know, and I said, the reality is it's going to be us opening doors for us. And that is why it is so important that people like me and Eric succeed, right? So that we become wealthy, so that we can become the next Sol and Laura, so that we become the people that redistribute the wealth to our communities, because that is also, as you know, what the data shows, right? Just like Latinos hire more Latinos, we also, once we get wealth, we then redistribute it back and we pour it back into our communities and lift everyone else up. And so that is, you know, I just wanted to highlight that because that is something that all Latino founders should be thinking about as well. And the reality of raising capital is that, again, going back to my earlier point, I don't have to explain my lived experience to you because you have the same one. So I don't need to explain that part to you. We can just get straight to business and talk about how do we scale this? How do we grow this? What are the tools? You know, who are the, you know, team members? But it's going to be us that helps us, which is why it's so imperative that all of us succeed.
Yeah, and that's music to my ears again. So Eric, let's talk a little bit about discipline, right? In terms of, here you are, you're a very bright individual that's got great technology experience. You want to build a company, but let's talk a little bit about some of the tension that we've had in terms of going through the process of building out how not only the idea, but the idea, how it gets to market, and through whom does it get to market, and what are the disciplines that you picked up that You know, maybe at the beginning you weren't thinking that was so important, but you found that, you know, as we introduce to different companies and we find out what the demand is and the capabilities, et cetera, those are equally important, not just the technology itself.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So for me, a lot of the learnings have been on when and how to approach our strategic partners. So I am a B2B company, and much more so on the strategic side, long-term contracts and negotiations. So what Sol and Oscar and the partners at Latitude have done is like, hey, we know this industry, we know what it takes to get you in front of these customers. So let's set up the milestones, let's set up the deliverables, let's make sure you have the capital so that when I open up my network, you are ready to give them everything that they need so that that funding and that contract is guaranteed. And going through that learning experience with you guys has been very valuable. And I will say that as an entrepreneur, I think it's a job where you're always learning, and you have to have that learning mindset going into this, and look at these partners as great mentors, because they have the scars, they have the experience, they've walked the paths that we are walking now, and it's just awesome to have that in my back pocket and go, hey, Sol, I'm a little stuck here. I can't get a hold of this guy. Can you help me here? And what do you think about this, the idea and that idea? It's so approachable, and really value that to have that network in my pocket.
Yeah. And again, I just want everybody to know that Latitude Ventures, we're here, yes, to supply capital, but we're here to help you achieve your success and trying to find the right paths to whatever that success is, because everybody's path is going to be a little bit different, but there are disciplines that can help make sure that your path, even though it might be different, is going to go through the disciplines that enable, you know, there's no guarantees, but will enable that success. And that's what we love about what we're doing. I mean, my wife Corinne and I, we talked. She says, "How's it going?" And tell me about Eric, you know, because she remembered you with crutches, you know, in the first time. Tell me about Sandra and, you know, her effusive personality in terms of Nopalera. And she talks about Kayla and all the others that I won't mention here because we don't have enough time. But this is like familia. And we think about everybody as familia. And yes, sometimes like in families, we have hard conversations, right? Sometimes we have to do course corrections and other things. And most of the time it's trying to find ways to help you be as, you know, as successful as you can be. And also this networking idea that Sandra talked about, you know, and that you as well, Eric, when we get everybody together, like at Latitude and at the matchup event, this opportunity to support each other and learn from each other and accelerate each other's learnings, we're creating the, you know, the first generation alums of Matchup and Latitude Ventures, because we want to build this ecosystem that people can look to each other also for capital, also for connections, also for learnings as we evolve here. And we're going to continue to grow, you know, Latitude Ventures, and we're going to continue to grow it within this whole ecosystem of Latitude. Because at Latitude, as you know, reference Sandra, you'll see the CEOs of all these big companies that most people read about, but they're there to talk about the Latina cohort in our neighborhood. And that's why when Gary and I created Latitude as an event, we wanted to invite everybody into our neighborhood. Not we're always, you know, where we're all always going into somebody else's neighborhood. They're coming into ours and they're finding out, look at that talent, look at those ideas, look at, you know, the enthusiasm, this notion of familia that really is unique to the Latino cohort. And that's the beauty, I think, of what we're doing and why we wanted to have this, you know, first version of a webinar so that people can hear from you. I know I've been speaking a lot right now, but I love what we're doing. I love seeing each of you be as successful as you can. And I know Gary and Oscar and Laura, and now Pete as one of our newest team members, and Kenny, who was part of our founding, startup, actually, that everybody is, every time we get together, we speak with pride about each of you, and we speak about how each of you can be helped even more in whatever ways that we can. So I think we'll draw this session in terms of our conversation to a close, and if we're allowed here to do a few Q&As.
Yeah, I think we've run out of time for a bunch of Q&As. I'll try to address it in our closing here. But this has been fantastic. I love it. I mean, what you guys talked about is getting me so fired up for Miami. So Sandra and Eric, your stories are why we exist. Sol, Sandra, Eric, it's been a really insightful conversation. Also, a huge thank you to the Latitude team, Laura, Kenny, Cecilia, Anastasia, Dario. We are honored to call you nuestra familia. So before we close this out, if you are a founder, we want to hear from you. We believe in you, and we want to back you. So please submit your pitch forms for Matchup 2023. We are accepting submissions now. If you'd like to participate, go to latitudeventures.com. If you're not a founder, there are plenty of reasons why you want to be in the room at Matchup this year. This is where our community comes together to network, to interact with all the power players across multiple industries. So please go to latitude.net to register for Latitude this year. And so finally, I'd like to say thank you to every one of you for joining us today. You are nuestra familia, our community, and we look forward to seeing you in Miami this year at Latitude. Have a beautiful week, everyone.